I also see Ambassador Sanjeev Singla here, and welcome to him. So the issue about women in STEM has, in my view, and it's probably a view which needs to be corrected in many aspects, has got three components to it. And this relates, first of all, to components which come about over millennia of the way our societies are structured. Now, I'll come to this point again. The second component is one about how this has translated into the economic sphere. And the third is a very structural component in the way our institutions function. Now, historically, the role of women in society has changed, and we don't have time to go into that in great depth. And there are reasons for which this has happened, related to the domestication of plants and animals and how families and societies are structured. Now, there is also, coming to the second point about the way economies are structured, there is a view, because of the first, that there are inherent limitations on the roles women can play in society. And this is complete rubbish, because humans have transcended their limitations of physiology and biology in an extraordinary number of spheres. We were not meant to fly, but we are flying. So there's no reason at all for there to be any biological reason for limiting economic activity and scientific activity of anyone, let alone women. Now, the practical aspect of this has been that the economic structure basically so far pays one person a salary, and that one person is usually a male, and that one person is expected to work 24/7 to do the job of several people, and the several people at the back end making sure that this man succeeds is the family. Now, unless this fundamental problem is addressed economically by changing the salary and the employment structure, we are going to constantly be tweaking things rather than dramatically changing things. Now, this is a big challenge and not easy to implement. And science and technology is one area, because of its inherent flexibility in functioning, that this change can be brought about, be exemplary, and something which the rest of society, the rest of our economy can take. And this is therefore a big opportunity for our science academies and our science interactions to put in place mechanisms where people are paid for their job they do, and this employment is distributed in a gender-neutral manner. Finally, there are our areas of focus are important, but they should not detract from these first 2 points I made. Our areas of focus are making our institutions, friendly to women in their functioning. That's very, very important. There are many legal structures in place, but they need to be, implemented in a manner where the form and content both come together. And these relate to daycares, flexible jobs, and so on and so forth. Therefore, rules which say you have to come in and check in at a particular time and check out at a particular time may sound fine from an operational point of view of some companies. They don't usually work well in academia, and certainly don't work well when you need to have flexibility in functioning, as in science and in family structures. So these are points which need to be implemented on a larger scale. All too often, we tend to focus our discussion on this third point alone. It's very, very important, but we need to have ways by which we keep the first two in mind. Finally, our selection and promotion structures are again dominated by the aspects which emanate from the first two. We need to keep in mind the timelines for career development are different in different contexts, and flexibility for that for women is something very important and needs to be structurally embedded. So I'll stop here and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Professor Vijayaraghavan, for your insightful and supportive remarks. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Shabana. It is my pleasure now to introduce you Dr. Gaia Loren, Deputy of Chief Scientist at MOIST, the Israeli Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. Gaia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sharon. So hello, everyone. Let me first introduce myself. So I'm Dr. Gaia Loren. After working for 25 years in the high-tech and venture capital industries in Israel, I've recently joined the Israeli Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology as the Deputy Chief Scientist from the Israeli Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. I'm honored to open Israel and India's webinar, Women in STEM, sharing ideas and initiatives. We are here today to address the important issue of overcoming the gender gap in the scientific community and technological industry, discussing why it exists and what can be done to reduce it. The Israeli Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology is entrusted with the development of applied research according to its chosen fields of national priority. For that purpose, the ministry supports the academic community and research institutes in Israel and conduct collaborations with other countries to increase Israel's scientific relations. The ministry also promotes initiatives in the field of science and community to encourage the accessibility of individuals from the country's periphery to science. In addition, a significant component in the ministry's activities in Israel is Israel's Space Agency, who promotes space-related activities in Israel and conducts Israel's international relations in the field of space. Last but not least, the Israel Innovation Authority, previously a separate statutory authority, has been affiliated with the ministry during this year. Hence, it can be said that an essential part of the promotion of civil innovation, applied science and technology in Israel is currently concentrated in the ministry. Here lies an opportunity for the ministry to increase women's participation in all areas of scientific and technological endeavor in the academic community and in Israel's advanced entrepreneurial industry. The ministry considers the promotion of women in participating in STEM as an investment in the future of the country and is therefore proud that the Council for the Advancement of Women in Science and Technology works alongside it. We are pleased to be given the opportunity and ability to support the Council's important activities, such as the promotion of gender equality among researchers and entrepreneurs in the fields of science, technology, and striving to increase the representation of women in senior positions. Israel is one of the leading countries in technological innovation and industry and have gained a worldwide recognition as a startup nation. Yet, the gender gap in these fields cannot be ignored. Unfortunately, the proportion of women starting at technology-based businesses is significantly lower than that of men. In addition, report studies from recent years indicate that women are often experiencing difficulties raising funds for their entrepreneurship. While they continue being a world leader in the high-tech industry, Israel attributes great significance to the reduction of the gender gap, and we are in the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology aspire to find more ways to encourage women to join the high-tech industry and along with its core technological entrepreneurship. The current webinar deals with two related issues that the ministry seeks to promote. These are supporting innovation and technological entrepreneurship and increasing the relative share of women in the technological entrepreneur community. The combination of the two will enable finding and creating innovative solutions to existing needs and new ones, while addressing a wide range of populations. I'm confident that this webinar will pave the way for creative and helpful thinking on the subject and provide insights for supporting and accelerating the inclusion of more women in technological entrepreneurship in Israel and in India. I wish us all an interesting and successful webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren, for your kind words. Shabana, back to you.
I now request His Excellency Sanjeev Singla, Ambassador of India to Israel, to say a few words. Is he there? I saw him here, but his face has disappeared from the screen, so I'm not sure if he's there.
I'm there. Can you hear
sorry.
me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Principal Scientific Advisor, Dr. Vijayaraghavan, Deputy Chief Scientist, Dr. Gaya Lauren, Professor Shobna, Dr. Sharon, my friend Ambassador Naur Gilon, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, namaste and shalom. I'm delighted to be a part of this half-day mini conference between India and Israel to promote greater participation of women in STEM. You know, ever since we enhanced our bilateral relationship with Israel to the level of a strategic partnership in 2017, it has been our endeavor to have a sharp focus on strengthening our partnership as two knowledge economies, and a key component of that involves intensifying our collaborations in innovation and research in STEM areas. Now, India has one of the world's largest pools of scientific and technical manpower that is engaged in both basic research and applied research in sciences. Given our demographic advantage, given the fundamental changes happening around us that impact our development priorities, and given the disruptive technologies which are accelerating around us, India has been encouraging our young scientists under the motto of innovate, patent, produce, and prosper. We are encouraging startups. Today, we have one of the world's largest number of startups. We are also encouraging and incentivizing women to pursue careers in STEM. And today, India has a greater share of women graduates in STEM as compared to many of the most advanced economies. Israel, of course, is known as the startup nation and has strengths in many niche areas. And there's a lot that we can gain from each other. Today's conference, aimed at exploring ideas and initiatives to encourage women in STEM, is, we are convinced, a step towards fulfilling the vision shared by the leadership of both of our countries to strengthen our strategic partnership that is anchored in research and innovation. The themes of government initiatives to promote gender inclusivity in STEM, encouraging women entrepreneurs, bridging gender gap in academia, highlighting the lives of women in science and research institutes in non-urban areas, they all underscore some of our shared challenges. We hope that structured exchanges and platforms like today's webinar would help to build strong linkages between our women scientists and technologists, as also encourage the strong network of Indian students who are pursuing higher education in STEM areas in Israel to act as a bridge to connect our two ecosystems. So I wish you a very productive and fruitful discussion. Toda Rabba and Hanukkah Sameach.
Thank you, Ambassador. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you for the greetings. So I'm honored to bring you introductory remarks that were recorded by H.E. Naor Gilon, the ambassador of Israel to India. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us today. So please share us his remarks by video.
Amit?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be part of this webinar encouraging Indian and Israeli women to go into the fields of science and math. I think that there are a few advantages probably that I can see coming out of this webinar. The first advantage, it's another layer in already wonderful relations between India and Israel. Second one, it's dealing with women in two countries that already in the 70s were leaders, avant-garde of the world in this field, with two women prime ministers as Indira Gandhi and Golda Meir. And I think that our countries should come back and be world leaders in this field. Another element is the fact that women going into the sector of technology, which is probably the leading sector in many economies, surely in the Israeli one, but also in India, will make these women more strong and influential in society. And the last element, these sectors of technology are very conducive for the well-being of the people in the world with their developments and achievements. And I'm sure that the entrance of women, more women, into this field will give a boost also in this sense. So I wish everyone a wonderful, successful, and fruitful webinar.
So we thank H.E. Naor Gilon and Shabana. Back to you.
I now request Shri S.K. Varshne, who's an advisor in the Department of Science and Technology, to say a few words.
Namaskar, Shalom. It's a pleasure being here. And it took quite some time after we decided to have this webinar, maybe roughly about a year and a half. When we started the original discussions, we felt that there are areas in STEM where a lot of women researchers are coming. But then there are some areas which require course corrections, and these areas could be like physics, engineering, or hardcore sciences. So how we could enhance participation of women researchers in underrepresented areas of science and engineering, we thought we could make our deliberation upon, and we could learn from the best practices we are doing in both the countries. India, as Dr. Vijay has also mentioned, we have already started a lot of programs. Ambassador Singla also mentioned about that, startups. What we have done that we are done 2 or 3 major programs in the researches, like bringing those women researchers who have gone out of science and to bring them back. That is one program. Second program is how to give incentive, more incentive to women researchers. Third program, which we have started in recent past, is promoting women entrepreneurships. We have recently launched another program that how we could bring gender advancement in transforming institutions, so called Gati. Here we are giving incentive to institutions where a fair balance in the gender equity is achieved. So a lot of initiatives we have started, and I'm sure government of Israel would have also done, realizing that participation of women researchers in Israel is also around 20%. So this needs to be corrected, and we thought today's our discussion would help us in understanding what are the best practices, and if there are some lessons, we could consider it for further adoption in our respective system. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward for an exciting day. Thank you. Shobnaji, you are muted.
Thank you, Shri Varshne. Sharon, over to you.
So it is my pleasure to introduce you to our last speaker in this session, Mr. Eliaz Luf, the Director of the Division for International Relations at the Israeli Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. Eliaz, you're on.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I'm really excited to be here this morning or afternoon in India. We think in our ministry, this is one of our goals to promote and to develop more women participation in the fields of STEM. And we think this webinar is a great opportunity for both countries. The cooperation between Israel and India has a long way back. It started back in 1993. With signing the first scientific agreement between the two governments. And since then, we have already accomplished more than 60 bilateral mutual research, very successful in many fields of applied research. And we are looking forward to continue and to increase the cooperation between the two countries in the scientific fields. We hope, and we're looking forward to have more women joining us to our programs, and it will be our contribution to to have more and more women in those STEM research fields, also from Israel and from India, working together. So I wish us all to have a very fruitful and interesting webinar. I'm sure it's going to be one. And thank you again, everybody.
So thank you very much, Mr. Luf, not only for your kind remarks, but also for establishing these great relations with the Indian DST, a thing that actually led us to this event today. So now, without further ado, we will move to our first session, where we will share with you some governmental initiatives that each of the two countries take in order to promote women in STEM. And our first speaker will be me. So I will now share my presentation. Let me see if I have it here. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes, very clear.
Okay, good. So good morning to our Israeli audience and good afternoon to all of our guests from India. Thank you for joining us today at this great event where speakers from Israel and India will share ideas and initiatives regarding women in STEM. And I will start by a short introduction. My name is Dr. Sharon Rashi-Elkeles, and I'm the chairwoman of the Israeli Council for the Advancement of Women in Science and Technology, working in the frame of the Israeli Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. In my background, I hold a PhD in human genetics and have more than a decade of experience in leading and managing academic studies at Tel Aviv University. 10 years ago, I've left the academy and started my entrepreneurial chapter. I opened 2 startup companies and eventually funded a platform aimed at promoting startups in the femtech sector that concentrates on women's health. In October 2020, I was nominated as the chairwoman of the Council for the Advancement of Women in STEM and Science, and since then, I am working hard to fulfill the mission and promote as much as I can. So the Council was established 20 years ago following a governmental decision aimed at increasing the number of women that are practicing science and working in research and development. This step was part of the obligation that Israel took upon itself when joining the European R&D program that started in the early days of the millennium. Back then, the European Parliament realized that a key point in leveraging knowledge-intensive economy is increasing the number and quality of those engaged in the craft and promoting women and making them a bigger part of the STEM-based industry was part of their solution. So what are the Council's missions? First, to coordinate the activity between all the bodies that work to promote women in science and technology, including public, private, and non-for-profit organizations. Second, to support and initiate projects aimed at promoting women in education, academy, and industry. Our third goal is to collect data on status of women that engaged in science and technology in Israel. And the last one, I'm not sure if this box is there. Okay, is to collect, and the last one is to coordinate Israeli activity with the EU with regards to promoting women in science and technology. Our entire activities, for some reason, it's not, okay. Now, our entire activities are planned and carried out by 3 committees, each directed to a specific stage in women's lifetime: education, academy, and industry. In the Education Committee, we try to decode how to encourage young girls to choose STEM education. The Education Committee actually oversees activity at all levels of formal and informal education. The committee collects data and tracks trends on gender equality in education, maps sources of inequality in education, maps and encourages initiatives for the advancement of gender equality, and coordinates between schools, informal education bodies, non-for-profits, and governmental bodies. The Academy Committee is devoted to find ways to elevate the number of women students in STEM faculties and increase the number of women with full professorship status and managerial positions. The Academy Committee oversees activity within the field of higher education, and this spans from undergraduate level to the highest levels of professor. The committee collects data and tracks trends on gender equality in academia, map obstacles to women's advancement, and coordinates between government ministries and institutes of higher education. This committee is composed of representatives from numerous institutes in higher education, research institutes, and governmental bodies. Our third committee, our industry committee, there we seek to increase the number of women sitting in executive positions in the high-tech, biotech, and health industries. This committee oversees activity with the business sectors. The committee collects data, tracks trends on gender equality in business, map obstacles to women's advancement, and actually work with private tech sector and coordinates between the private industries, non-profit dedicated to advance women in this tech sector, and governmental bodies. This committee is composed of representatives from numerous companies, professional organizations, and governmental bodies. As I mentioned earlier, one of the Council's missions is to coordinate the Israeli activity with the EU with regards to promoting women in research and innovation. And for that purpose, we participate in Birac committees that manage gender equality within the European research area. Birac is the EU's strategic policy advisory committee on topics related to research and innovation. So I would like to actually summarize my 7-minute presentation and 2 decades of the Council's work with an optimistic tone. Yes, 20 years had passed since the Council was established, and unfortunately, women are still facing barriers to entry the STEM fields and are still underrepresented in both the academy and the industry. Nevertheless, we shouldn't lose hope, as there are signs for changing tides. There is a growing number of movements and communities that we are all going to see today that are working to increase public awareness of this imbalance. Governments like our 2 countries start to acknowledge the problem and are willing to put efforts and funding to map and characterize the barriers and to find solutions also. And even the private sector is joining the trend. So thank you all for listening, and I wish you all to enjoy the rest of this conference.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I want to say that if anybody has any questions for any of the speakers, please type them into the chat box. We will take them a little bit later. So now I request Dr. Nisha Mendiratha from the Department of Science and Technology to tell us about DST initiatives on gender equity. Dr. Mendiratha is advisor in the Department of Science and Technology, and she also heads the WISE Kiran section in DST, which I guess she will tell us about. Dr. Mendiratha.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Shobna. And my warm greetings to everyone, all the speakers from both the countries. It is a real privilege for me to give a brief idea about the initiative which has been taken up by Department of Science and Technology in the area of gender equity. So I will just share quickly a brief presentation just to summarize all the initiatives which has been taken up by the department. I hope my PPT is visible to all.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah.
You can make it full screen.
Full screen, sure, please. I'm just doing it. Yeah. So here already the previous speakers has given a very elaborate idea about the need of promoting women in STEM. But just to set the ball rolling, I am just giving a few facts and figures before coming to the actual initiatives which has been taken up by the department. As we all are aware that significance of women in STI has really gained attention with globalization and also with the advancement of many technologies. So the domain of work is getting oriented for skilled women now in the current era. And diversity and inclusion in workforce has also enhanced creativity. And we need to really look towards strengthening the STI ecosystem, which is enabling towards women career growth. So this is a well-known representation which talks about the, percentage of women researcher. And here we can see that India is having.
We are still seeing only your cover slide.
Oh, it's not moving. Yeah, please.
So what I would suggest is you stop sharing and then share your full screen, share your full desktop rather than just this slide.
Fine. That I will do. But meanwhile, I think just for the interest of time, I'll keep on telling, even if.
Yes, please.
Yeah, because, it is allocated 7 minutes to me.
Yeah.
So just please see, is it seen now?
Yes, now it's perfect.
Yeah, fine. So this is a well-known depiction of the percentage of women by UNESCO, and India is having a very low representation when we talk about the world's average. And this is a very interesting study which just captured the attention of everyone recently, in which it talks about the graduates in STEM are much higher in India as compared to various other important countries. Here you can see it's around more than 40, it's reaching around 50%. When we talk about the graduate level. But again, there is a downfall after PhD. We find when we talk about the women in research, there is a very, very steep decrease. So what are the reasons behind that? So as per one of the study which was carried out by one of the group, they say that there is a need to upskill them constantly. There are long hours which are not sometimes favorable to women researcher. And of course, they say it's a male-dominated environment, but some of the speakers and the participants here, they may disagree with that. And there is a social discouragement and also less pay compared to men. That is also another factor. So the issue is how to look into these challenges, how to overcome these challenges. So here I thought that just to sharing the thing that here the enabler should be system, society, support to the woman, and then self within the woman also that feeling should come that they are very strong and they can take up many things at par with men. But here I will just try to talk about the system. So here when we are talking about system, the policy interventions and government initiatives, they play a major role. I am not talking about all other things at present. So when we are talking about the government initiatives, so then I am linking with the initiatives taken up by Government of India from the Department of Science and Technology. Actually, the whole issue took an active range in the 6th five-year plan, which was sometime in the year 1980. And first time, women in science aspect was discussed in detail by the government. And then onward, it is active charter in many organizations working in Government of India. And specifically for DST, a dedicated program for women started in the year 2004. It was at that time by the name Disha. Then it was changed to Kiran. And from 2014 onwards, it was Kiran. And now it is known as Vice Kiran, Women in Science and Engineering and Kiran program. So here I am just telling about the broad aim, and we are trying to work towards encouraging and empowering Indian women workforce in higher education and further in scientific R&D and technology participation. This is our main aim and vision. As already I mentioned, that we need to enhance the women contribution, to be at par with the world's average. I am not going to talk about all this because my previous speakers have already touched these aspects. And here, the thing which I want to say that DST supports women exclusive schemes with the mandate to bring gender parity. And broadly, we have tried to look into 3 aspects. One is human resource development. It is again for all walks of life, from women scientists up to girl students. I would like to emphasize here for young students, we have dedicated program, which is very popular now. Infrastructure development we are looking at, and of course the policies which provide good enabling environment to the women in terms of their careers, enhancing their career pathway in academia, university and research organizations across the country. I just took this opportunity to give a broad idea about the many initiatives taken up by other major departments of the country as well. DST I am going to tell now, but DBT also, Madam Renu Swarup and PSA sir is here. They are also running many important programs, which I think she'll be covering. UGC, ICMR. They are also the active players in women schemes, in taking of women schemes forward. So now I'm coming to my division, which I am looking after. And here,
you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I will just summarize. So Women Scientist Scheme is there, which is in 3 themes, A, B, and C. Here we provide support to the women who have got break-in career. We provide them 3 years fellowship. Vigyan Jyoti is one program, which is for the girls who are in underrepresented areas all across the country, 500 districts we are going to cover in next 5 years. We have one Indo-US fellowship program for women, in which women researchers and faculty, they go to the place of their choice for conducting some research. And then Curie is another program which is towards infrastructure creation in women universities only. And Gati is another important program which Mr. Vashni had just mentioned, which is a new program in line with Athena Swan. We have started right now. 30 pilot institutions are along with us. And the other programs also of DST are for women, which talks about the training programs, women technology parks. SCRB is another organization of DST who have got Women Excellence Awards, SCRB Power Fellowship Awards, and many more things are there, which I think due to paucity of time, I'm not able to show right now. So here I will not talk much because already Vijay Raghavan sir has spoken about many facets of policy which he is leading here in DST. So draft STI policy 2020 is there online, in which a specific chapter on women is there, chapter number 7, which talks about the gender equity. These are the 6 tracks, and already these things have been mentioned by him. So I am just coming to the way forward part. These are the programs which already I mentioned, and we are going to take up those programs in much rigorous manner. So here I would like to just end with the quote that developing countries that have made remarkable social progress have done so primarily through the empowerment of women, which has also had enormous impact in terms of literacy, health, and economic well-being of family. So in summary, I would like to say that participation of women is extremely critical, and DST is playing a pivotal role in providing policy support, enhancing infrastructure, and motivating women at all level and age for the increased participation in STEM. And we are working for women and working by women scientists. That's what I want to tell. And thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Okay. We're already behind time, but there is one question from Abhijit Dhillon. It's, hello, Dr. Nisha. Can you please share some insights on how the Indian government is working on the infrastructure part of promoting women in science? If you can say something very quickly, perhaps you can say, take that question.
Thank you very much. Infrastructure is one of the important issue which we thought women universities are there. We have got many women universities and colleges, but when we see the girls who want to pursue a specialized course, they are not having that kind of infrastructure available. So we are providing them support by giving them like equipment for setting up of lab, and especially in AI and IT, we are giving a lot of support to the women universities. There is a program called Curie. So at present, there are 8 universities who are on board, and we have started another program, Curie AI, Artificial Intelligence, which I can share details with you. And now we have made an announcement for women colleges as well. Just recently, we are planning to move to colleges as well. And here I would like to add on one thing. Another important program known Stuti is being launched by Department of Science and Technology to create infrastructure. And here this program is being led by Infrastructure Division of DST, and Vice Kiran is contributing or participating in that in terms of bringing women participation, infrastructure facility. It is basically, yeah, I can share more details later on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mendiratha. We'll move on to the next talk. It's a keynote talk by Dr. Renu Swarup. She's a geneticist And until very recently, she was Secretary of the Department of Biotechnology of the Ministry of Science and Technology of the Government of India. She's also chairperson of Birac, which is the Biotechnology Industry Research Assistant Council. And maybe she will tell us more about that. I will cut short my introduction and hand over to Dr. Swaroop.
Thank you very much, Shobna, and a very good morning and good afternoon to all of you. And it's a pleasure to be here today for this Indo-Israel webinar that you are having in Women in STEM. As has been said, I think India and Israel have had a wonderful cooperation in terms of many activities. And I'm glad that Sanjeev said that even after 1.5 years, at least you've been able to bring it to this point where you could come together to discuss what could be the priorities that you take forward for women in science. And when Shobna spoke to me about this, there was no way I could say no, because this is a subject which is so close to my heart. And looking at how you could promote it between two countries which have such an excellent cooperation, I think this is clearly one of the areas which needs a lot of emphasis. And I'm glad that this is now being mainstreamed into the policy decisions between the two countries. We've heard the previous talks in terms of what really is about the Indo-Israel cooperation, the various schemes, the various initiatives that you have, whether it's the Ministry of Science and Technology or whether it's the various agencies which are cooperating. I think the key aspects that we need to cover, and Shobna did ask me to speak on women entrepreneurship, and I think I will focus on that. But before I go to that, it's important to understand that for areas of technology, we do need to have a very, very strong foundation. And I think that foundation comes in trying to see how you can bring the young girl students, the young girl child, and bring them towards science and technology. Whenever you talk about technology areas, it's important that we focus on the education, which is so key and critical. And that automatically then takes us to diverse fields in which they would want to move into as they get into science as a career, whether it's research in academia, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's other support areas which can support the science and technology field. I think what we've all agreed upon, and that's really why we are here, is that unless we have policies and enablers which facilitate the implementation of the schemes that we envisage, it's going to be difficult for us to take it ahead, because the governments have wonderful schemes that we put into place. But it's important that we see an excellent implementation of these, because if you have to ensure gender parity, it has to be across all areas. When we look at statistics, we do see that, and Nisha just showed you some of those very key statistics, that you have excellent programs which can actually bring in the women into the undergraduate and the graduate studies. And then what we conventionally call the leaky pipeline, as they say, that we do lose them as they go into PhD and then they go into various other entrepreneurial programs. The reason is, of course, the ecosystem that we build and develop to enable this to happen. For the science and technology education, we've heard about the various activities, whether it's the infrastructure which is being created, whether it's the university systems, whether it's trying to see how we can bring girls from different districts and take them forward. Similarly, for the entrepreneurship ecosystem, I think the government of India has put in a lot of policy enablers to see how we can promote that. One, of course, is clearly when we had the Startup India Action Plan, which was launched in 2016, there was also a program that was launched, and that was by our Prime Minister, which was called the Stand Up India. And that Stand Up India was primarily to look at microcredit schemes and other financial resources which can facilitate women entrepreneurship to take on. As you would understand, within the country, we have different socio-cultural requirements. We have different models in which we have to operate. One is, of course, looking at the technology entrepreneurship, which is for high-tech technologies, which is for looking at things that we've just spoken about, AI, You're talking about biotech, and you're talking about ML and many others, whether it's physics or mathematics. But there is also a very important entrepreneurship role that we have to look at, and that's for our women in the rural sector, the self-help groups, looking at those areas. How do we promote those aspects as well? So we have different enablers that we've been able to put together. And these gender-related schemes, whether they are based on the education, on the infrastructure, or on the financial empowerment, are so very important, because for entrepreneurship, it's very important not only to empower them technologically, but also to empower them financially. Because unless and until you do that, that's one of the biggest bottlenecks that we have. When we see why is women entrepreneurship not moving ahead, it's because of the financial. You need to ensure financial inclusion. And I think that aspect is what, from the government of India, we've been looking at, whether it's the Department of Science and Technology or the department which I was leading, the Department of Biotechnology. Shobna mentioned about Birac. Birac is a wholly owned government company which was set up just to promote and nurture startups. Then we have the Niti Aayog, which is again a very important arm of the government, a think tank, which is again looking at promoting innovation, entrepreneurship. All these together, and many other ministries and departments. For the electronics, we have the Ministry of Electronics, we have the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, we have the Ministry of Agriculture, the Department of Rural Development. All these together come and see how they could look at promoting women entrepreneurship. We have dedicated women incubation centers, whether they're called by different names, called technology parks, or called incubation centers, or called women translational centers, or women, entrepreneurship centers, entrepreneurship development cells, different sets of names. The purpose is, and also, as I've said, we have rural entrepreneurship centers. So they call, and primarily India being a biodiversity rich country, we focus on the bioresources. So we call them the rural bioresource centers, where we facilitate not just the deployment of technologies developed within academic institutes, but fine-tune them to the needs of the rural sector and see how you could help convert and set up self-help groups. So that has been a very major activity that we've done at the rural sector. But then, of course, these large number of technology centers that we've been able to establish as well. If you look at the scenario in the last couple of years, even if I talk about the last 5 years, India has been clearly a startup hub, and we have been having a large number of startups and others who have been, promoting entrepreneurship activities. And women, we started with a very minuscule number of which was single-digit percentages of women entrepreneurs. Today, we are really increasing that. And roughly, it would be in different sectors. In the biology and the biotech sector, it would be about 20 to 25%. Low numbers still lots to achieve before we reach the gender parity of 50-50, but at least we are moving in that direction. So I think some of the key aspects that we would need to focus on is what is it that we need to do to overcome these, because as I've said, there is clearly a socio-cultural environmental change that we need to bring in. It's not just about bringing in enablers, but it's also empowerment. So it's both enabling and empowering this women, for women entrepreneurship, the whole ecosystem. It's looking at what really are those cultural restraints that they have. How do you overcome those? What are those traditional roles which have been set out for women? How can you change these? Because we generally have very traditional roles that we set out, and we say, okay, even if it's a woman entrepreneur, they cannot go beyond these sets of technologies. I think it's sort of changing those mindsets to be able to give them and mainstream them into whatever we are doing, whatever role that we are playing. And for this, it's very important. And here, I think the two governments need to play a very major role, which we are doing. In fact, most of our collaborations that we do with many other countries, we have focused exactly on this. How do you create those policies and those enablers, which, as I've said, not only enable them, but also empower them technologically and financially? How do you improve that ecosystem, which allows for women to become part of the mainstream of entrepreneurship? Here, and I know Shobna is running behind time, so I would not want to get into too many details, but I'd like to share that when I said we have about 25% women entrepreneurs, We have schemes in which young students can actually be given financial grants. So you help academic spin-offs to come out from universities, come out from IITs, come engineering colleges, and set up their own startups in these incubation centers. So they have an initial ignition grant that we give them. As they move with the ignition grant, they get their prototypes finalized. We then give them a development or their final idea development validation grant. But what is more important is we connect them with large networks of industries so that these ideas that they have get mainstreamed into the larger industry networks, and they move then through the translational phase. And let me say here, in these COVID times, we had a lot of issues, but I think one sector that came up was the biotech sector. And clearly, we had a large number of women entrepreneurs who came up with excellent S&T solutions, which today are not only available for within the country, but these are also solutions which are available outside. One suggestion which I would like to make is, as one of the recommendations for your women entrepreneurship, India and Israel have an excellent cooperation in S&T. We have, and we could look at programs which would be connecting our incubation centers. And I know that we've done this earlier, especially the medical devices sector, one area which Israel is so well known for and India has the strength for. Again, an area in which women entrepreneurs have come up extremely well. It's an interdisciplinary field. It brings in the physicists, it brings in the clinicians, it brings in the chemists, it brings in the mathematicians because of the AI diagnostics tools that we are looking at, and of course the biologists. Through these Incubation Connect programs, you can actually have connections of the entrepreneurs on either side. We've done it extremely well for some other areas. We've done this for clean energy. We have set up these what we call sister innovation hubs. We've set it up with the US, we've set it up with UK, we've set it up with the Sweden and Finland. I'm sure with Israel, we could look at a model of an Incubator Connect program where we can encourage women entrepreneurs. We have at least 10 extremely well identified mature incubation centers just for women. We have women universities. We could connect these and make a very well-connected women entrepreneurship Indo-Israel connection program where you could have not only exchange of incubate the entrepreneurs on either side, but also the mentor network. The technology institutes who are engaged, they could be associated. So you have a larger pool. And the most important aspect for entrepreneurship is you actually then can showcase them and connect them to the investors. So it takes you to the market access as well. So I think these are some ideas that I had. I thought I'll share them with you. But just by saying this, we are on currently a stage where our growth trajectory looks so very beautiful, but incremental changes would not help. We need to do something different where we could bring in an exponential growth rate. And this can clearly happen with India and Israel coming up with a totally new innovative model. And let's be the first to do it. I'm sure for women entrepreneurship, I know we don't have a Connect program only for women entrepreneurship. So maybe Indo-Israel could be the first one that we can take on. So thank you very much. And thank you, Shobna, for having me here. Good luck to all of you. And I hope you have a wonderful session with some excellent recommendations. Thank you, Shobna. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Swaroop, especially for making a very concrete and interesting suggestion for bilateral cooperation. There's one question for you. It says, Dr. Swaroop, this is Shobana Sharma. What percentage of Birac proposals are taken up by women in the last 10 years, and has it improved with time?
Okay. So, Shobana, very interesting question. Yes, my first answer, it's improved with time. As I said, the number of applications would be larger. I mean, they would actually be, and let me not restrict it only to Birac. I will actually say DBT and Birac both, because that's how we've looked at it. We would have nearly about 50 to 60%. But then we have an advantage of biology anyway being, women being attracted to biology in a big way. But if you look at the entrepreneurs, as I said, we began with single digit numbers. We just had 5% and 7%. Today, we have something like 20%, 22% women entrepreneurs that we support. And in DBT, if you look at the investigators, that number has really gone up to somewhere near about 40%. And I'm not talking about the women oriented schemes of biocare, etc., which are only for women. I'm talking about the general. So they are about between 30 to 35% if you look at the general. So we're doing pretty well, but let biology be an example for other areas, and let's see them happening in other areas of science and engineering as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swaroop. There is another question for you in the chat box, but in the interest of time, maybe we'll move on, but you can look at the question in the chat box. It's not that related to today's theme, that's why I'm not taking it. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you, Shobna. So after hearing what is being done in India in order to encourage women's entrepreneurship, we will now hear two examples of special activities that are being done in this matter in Israel. I'm delighted to invite Ms. Hilah Wilbrenner, the Managing Director of Techstars Tel Aviv and the founder of Yazamiyot, the largest female entrepreneurship organization in Israel. Hilah is a serial entrepreneur in high-tech industry for over 15 years, and in 2015, she was named top 100 influential people in the high-tech industry. Hilah started her career as a lawyer and went on to co-found 3 companies, one of which is listed on TASE, and then she went on to be a mentor and an inventor. Hilah is a true believer in innovation and team spirit and is currently the managing director, as I said, of Techstars Tel Aviv Accelerator. Hilah is going to share some of her insights regarding promoting women entrepreneurs locally and globally. Hilah, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and I couldn't be happier to be here. I've had some interaction with the Indian government and initiatives regarding female founders, and I know everything is very exciting, and I'm glad to share from our side our initiatives and hopefully come up with actionable items together. Let me just share my presentation quickly. Okay, it's not sharing. 1 second. All right. Thank you. Can you all see it now?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Yazamiyot, an organization I founded about 10 years ago with over 8,000 female founders. I think it's a great example how we actually take entrepreneurs together and how we promote using initiatives that are very practical and actually partner with incredible international partners to do this. So what we have done in the last 10 years to grow our business is actually come up with programs that actually help female founders penetrate different markets. And some of our partners and programs included here are, for example, with Google, with Microsoft, with AWS, with various universities. And what we've tried to do all this time is actually take female founders and help them bring themselves forward, lean in, and actually cooperate with some of these big partners who actually wanted to lend a hand and actually help these female founders get founded and actually start their own business. So a little bit about myself. You've introduced me so nicely, so I don't want to go on speaking about this, but I only will say that I was always the only female in the room. So when I raised over $50 million in my life, I was always meeting investors that were male investors. I was looking around and seeing the terrible 5% female founders that we have overall in the industry. And I kept thinking to myself, why is it? And how can we take practical measures to actually make it happen? So on our management team are all these wonderful founders, but actually what we have done lately is went up from 2011 to today to 8,000 leading entrepreneurs, some of which are still in a very early stage, but some unicorns. And what we've decided to do is actually lend a hand and help these female founders actually get funded and actually penetrate and bring up the numbers. So why did we do this? Because we felt this was a really big aim of Israel and a very big pain in the world today. Techstars, for example, I'm the managing director, has 60 accelerators around the world. We're the biggest seed investor in the world today. And what I've seen all the time, also sitting on the DEI committee of the global Techstars team, is that this pain is very, very global. But I want to say that I feel in Israel we've made amazing progress using all of these partners. And I feel the more global innovations and the more global partnerships we have, especially with India and places like this, the better we can get at what we actually do. So what we usually do is we do courses for entrepreneurs. We teach them about B2C, about product. We help them with understanding. We introduce them. We help them with team building and legal and financial issues. And we actually educate them into the market. And the biggest objection I get a lot is people say, why do females need a different course than what male entrepreneurs actually need? And I want to say this, and this is very important, is I feel that females and also women entrepreneurs love to mingle with each other. And I see from a practical point of view that it actually really helps. I want to show a really 2-minute video on an initiative we did with Google that became worldwide. We did 7 cycles of this program here in Israel. And a true story is that we duplicated this in 13 places around the world. And I'm showing this short video so you can see how this actually happened.
Put it on full screen.
Being at home with a baby for a couple of months just didn't make any sense to me.
When I had my daughter Abigail, I decided to make the most of my maternity leave. Then I realized how cool would it be to launch a baby-friendly technological entrepreneurship course right here at campus.
We had so many applications to join the course. We landed up with a great mix of entrepreneurs and ideas.
I came with 16 years of knowledge in technology. I didn't know anything about the business.
I'm learning legal, product, UX, all the issues that are critical for my startup right now.
Our company is called Mapmic, and we're doing a new marketplace for real estate.
It's a mobile social app for that helps us manage our weight with friends.
We are an online personal stylist. I gained the ability to see that it was possible as a mom.
It's a sharing community, and it's amazing because we are here for each other.
Thanks to Campus TLV for Moms, we found our CTO.
We found each other.
Coming here once a week just boosts me with energy. I go out and stuff happens.
Yes, it's all very, very exciting. And we felt that the more programs we do together with Microsoft, together with Google, together with Intel, we just launched an incredible AI and machine learning program. And especially with STEM, medical devices and biology that women are very strong at, the more global innovation programs we launch, the numbers just continue going up. So I want to just, I don't know how, 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing this for a sec. Can you all see me? All right. So I want to just say the numbers in Israel and the initiatives are definitely going up, and especially also a lot due to government support. We're very, very happy that people like Sharon and others are in our government actually supporting these initiatives and understanding the pain points and how you can actually solve them. The good news is, I think that it is something that we can solve. And the initiatives we're doing together with the global players actually play a significant number, especially the university courses that we have. We had 3 in Tel Aviv universities. We've been winning a lot of prizes for actually helping our entrepreneurs go through these courses and find their path into the actual industry. So I'm glad to be here because it's such an important global initiative as well. And I thank everyone for this amazing conference. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Ila. So I wish you a lot of success. Continue with
Sharon,
the great work.
we don't hear you very well.
And now?
A bit
Do you hear
better.
me now? A bit better?
A bit better,
So
yes.
thank you, Ila. Continue with the great work, and hopefully after today you will be able to open a new branch in India. Thank you again. So we will now move to our next speaker, Ms. Karen Odd. Karen is the founder and CEO of WE, Women Entrepreneurship, a non-profit organization that promotes women for entrepreneurship. Karen holds a bachelor degree in industrial engineering and management from Ben-Gurion University. She did her military service as an officer, veteran of the Cyber Intelligence 8200 unit. Previously, Karen worked at Deloitte as a technology consultant, and alongside leading WE, Karen is also an R&D project manager. She writes a regular column for Forbes magazine and lectures in various companies. Karen was chosen as for Forbes as a 30 under 30 list for 2021, and she will now tell us about WE, Women Entrepreneurs from the Academy to the Industry. Karen, you're on.
Thank you, Sharon, for the introduction, for the invitation. I'm so happy to be here. Just let me share my presentation. Just a second. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So as Sharon mentioned, my name is Karen Odd. I'm the founder and CEO of WE, Women Entrepreneurship, a nonprofit organization that promotes women for entrepreneurship, especially young women at the beginning of their careers, and if to be more specific, so students and recent graduates. And before I will go to our vision and mission, I would like to tell you how I started this initiative. So I started it when I was a student 3 years ago, after I was exposed to the huge gap of women entrepreneurs, as I was participated in an entrepreneurship program at my university, and surprisingly, I was almost the only woman in the room. And then I decided to create a platform just for women students interested in entrepreneurship, and I decided to do it by opening a female entrepreneurship program at my university, and now it became a nonprofit organization with branches across Israel and the US, and hopefully in more countries in the future, maybe India. So let's get to our vision. So our vision is to get to equal representation of women entrepreneurs, and our mission is to give potential entrepreneurs everything they need to help them fulfill their entrepreneurial potential, which means to give them tools, help, guidance, inspiration, and supportive community, everything they need, so they will be able to pursue their entrepreneurial career. So why we, why us, and what are we different from other organizations? Because today there are many women organizations, entrepreneurship organizations, and so what are we different about? So we are the only global organization that promotes young women at the beginning of their careers while they're still students, and we help them to become entrepreneurs from this very early stage. So we believe that Academy plays a crucial part in exposing students to female role models, in installing values which encourage female entrepreneurship, and in providing women with potential tools that will help them to establish their own initiatives. And we do it globally. So our purpose is to connect all the young women that are students inside every country and between all the countries that we are operating in. So a little bit more about us. So as I mentioned, WE is a nonprofit organization that promotes women for entrepreneurship. Our main activity is that we offer entrepreneurship programs at leading academic institutions. And the program consists of weekly meetings with speakers from the industry. And we're operating in leading academic institutions, as I mentioned. And we also have an exclusive closed community for the WE graduates, where the students continue to get tools, inspiration, and guidance after they graduated from our course. So our goals are to help develop the professional capacity of aspiring entrepreneurs, provide them with the tools and everything they need, and to help them start their own ventures. Also to advance the fellowship and to establish a supportive community of female entrepreneurs, to increase the ratio of female entrepreneurs, and to become a model for other academic institutions. Hopefully it would be us that will operate in these campuses, but if it's not, it's okay. So what do we do? So we do networking. We is also a platform for networking with the participants, with the graduates, and with our speakers. We also do support and guidance throughout all stages of establishing a venture. We do training by internship, workshops, events, conferences that are all exclusive to the WE community. And we also, we did field visits. Now in the COVID period, we stopped it, but hopefully we'll get back to it in the future. So it's basically to go to see how a startup works from the inside. We also give practical tools, and the purpose is to get these young women to understand the process of entrepreneurship. And we also give inspiration. We meet these young women with role models that they can learn from, and to see that if they did it, so the participants can do it themselves as well. So here you can see our syllabus. We really teach everything from the beginning, starting from ideation to validation, how to choose your co-founders and your team. They learn about communication and business tools. They learn how to do market research, how to get funding, how to pitch their ideas to investors. They learn about financial and legal aspects, and they are exposed to experienced entrepreneurs, and they hear their personal story. So these are some of our speakers. Our speakers are entrepreneurs, investors, executives, or leaders from different domains. So you can see some of our speakers here. And these are some of our branches in Israel. As I mentioned, we're operating at academic institutions. So these are the leading academic institutions in Israel that we're operating in. And something very exciting happened in the last month. We opened branches in the US in Ivy League schools such as Harvard, Columbia, and MIT. So it's really exciting, and we're hoping to expand even to more campuses there. So now I want to tell you about WE by numbers. So each year we have 400 graduates. Currently we have 9 branches, and we have 170 speakers every year that involved in WE's activity. And here you can see our team. Our team is our students or women that are already in the industry. And here you can see our social media accounts if you would like to follow us and to get more information, if you would like to contact us. So you have our mail as well. We would be happy to collaborate and to open more branches also in India. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Karen. Such an interesting idea and very nice, Putli. And yes, after you took Boston, now it's time to take not Berlin, but India. So
Yeah,
thank
that's
you
right.
again.
Thank you.
Shavana, I think we're going back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. That was very interesting. So we'll now have some talks about bridging the gender gap in academia. Our next speaker is Vaishnavi Anantanarayanan. She has a PhD in biophysics from the Max Planck Institute of Molecular Cell Biology and Genetics in Dresden in Germany from 2014 to 2021. She was on the faculty of the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Her work has been recognized with many awards, which I will not list. She co-founded Biosport India, which is an initiative to document the representation of women in Indian academia and to combat gender-biased panels at Indian science conferences. And she will now tell us about that. Over to you, Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Shobna. I think my PowerPoint is just glitching a bit. Oh.
It's fine, Vaishnavi, we see it.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Do you see my presenter note? No, right?
No, we don't.
All right, okay. Thanks again, Shobna, for the introduction, and I'm really happy to be here today to give you an overview of the work that we've been doing with Biosport India. So Biosport India is essentially an initiative that I co-founded with Shruti Muralidhar as a collective to help highlight the lack of women representation and to highlight gender imbalance in Indian STEM talks, conferences, workshops, and panels. To give you a brief history, we started end of June 2020.
Just a second, Vaishnavi, can I request that everyone mute themselves except Vaishnavi because we're getting some disturbance. Thank you.
Vaishnavi. Oh, all right. Yeah, so to give you a brief history about Biosport India, we started end of June 2020. And technically, we were essentially frustrated at the lack of women in conferences that we kept seeing being advertised on social media. And in fact, Shruti, who's pictured here, she tweeted out asking if we could do something of Biosport Neuro, but for all of Indian science. So Biosport Neuro is an initiative founded in the US, if I remember correctly, that highlights the representation of women in neuroscience conferences across the world. So we wanted to do something of this sort, but for all of Indian science. And so essentially what we do, we think is important because Indian science does have a dearth of women voices and representation. Women scientists are also regularly excluded from conferences, panel discussions, and awards, and that's something that happens quite frequently. And Biosport India was formed to highlight these inequities and to provide real-time and actionable data as a basis for future remedial steps. Our mission is essentially to increase awareness of panels or panels that comprise solely of men, and therefore to prevent them in the future. We'd also like to document, of course, the lack of women representation in STEM fields in Indian academia, and to also provide up-to-date data on base rates for future policy making. I'll just touch upon what these base rates are in just a bit. But we also want to empower students and other academics to call out and essentially be aware of manels and how to avoid having them in the future. So the way that we go about doing the work that we do is essentially collect some data.
Vaishnavi, which slide should we be seeing? Because we're still seeing why is our work important?
I think somebody's taken control of my presentation, so I'm not able to. All right. Somebody else is actually controlling my presentation. It's asking me to sync to presenter. Let me try and take control again. There we go.
Okay,
I think it's
yeah.
Yes. Apologies, not quite sure what's happening, but yes. Do you see my data collection slide?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So the way that we go about doing the work for Biosport India is to first collect data on women speaker ratios in conferences. So we do this by reaching out to our Twitter followers or visiting the web pages of conferences themselves. And we typically get something that looks like this, which is a poster for a conference that was held sometime in 2020, if I remember correctly. But essentially, if we go through the speakers list of conferences such as these, we get a women speaker ratio. In this instance, it turns out to be 6 out of 18 women speakers, which is a ratio of 0.33. So this is, of course, the women speaker ratio for this particular conference. But for this number to make sense, we have to compare this against ground reality, which is essentially the proportion of women in Indian academia. Unfortunately, this is a number that does not exist in the public domain. And so what we resorted to is actually calculating these numbers ourselves. So we define the base rate as the ratio of number of women scientists or faculty members to the total number of scientists or faculty members. And we do this by institute or university, but we can also do this by field, such as physics, math, chemistry, and so on. And we get a base rate for all of Indian science as a result. This is an example of the Indian Institute of Science, where I used to work previously. We essentially visit the web pages of institutes. Typically, they are updated, but there are some issues surrounding that as well. But we physically we visit these web pages and visit individual department web pages as well to get base rates for biology, chemistry, and so on. So when we do this, what is the base rate of women in Indian academia, or the proportion of women in Indian academia? So we've surveyed 97 top-ranked Indian universities and institutes. And if you look at the base rate across science as a whole, we see that the number is only about 0.13. So essentially what this means is only 13% of Indian faculty members are women. And if you break this down by field, you see that biology has the highest at around 26% or 0.26. And the rest of the fields range anywhere from 0.09 for engineering to 0.16 for math. So overall, the base rate of women in Indian academia is only about 13%. And this, of course, matches with numbers from UNESCO that we saw in a previous presenter slide as well. Now, when we compare what happens in the context of women speaker ratios in conferences, we've actually surveyed 293 conferences. This is just looking at conferences that we documented between June 2020 and August 2021. We have 293 conferences that we've looked at. And across the board, we see quite a disappointing pattern, which is that women are underrepresented. So I'll just take you through what this means here. The base rate is indicated with the red line, and the median proportion of women speakers for conferences held in a specific field is indicated with the white circle. So for instance, in biology, the base rate we saw from previous slide was 26% or 0.26. And when we look at the median proportion of women speakers in conferences in biology that were held between June 2020 and August 2021, this was around 0.2. So what this is telling us is that women are actually underrepresented in conferences in biology on an average. And this is true for almost all of the fields that we've looked at. And if you look at all of Indian science, this is actually conferences that couldn't be classified as belonging to any other field. So these are general science category, that we put it in the general science category. But essentially across the board, we see that typically conferences underrepresent women. Given the fact that you have so few women to begin with, the fact that you underrepresent women is quite alarming. And in fact, another thing that you probably have seen from the slide here is the number of data points you have at the 0 line. So what these are actually indicating is the propensity of males at conferences that are held in India. And this is quantifying this a bit more. So the black circles are conferences that had 0 women speakers, proportion of conferences that had 0 women speakers. And the blue triangles are conferences that underrepresented women. So essentially these conferences had women speaker ratios below the base rates for that specific field. And what you'll see is quite disappointing. 60% of even biology conferences, where about 1 in 3 faculty members is a woman, had underrepresented women in their speaker list. And about 30% of all biology conferences featured absolutely no women. And this is only worse for other fields. In fact, if you looked at all the conferences that we looked at, about 40% of these conferences did not have a single women speaker. And if you look at the underrepresentation rate, 60% of conferences underrepresented women compared to the base rates. So this is where we are with regards to data collection. We're continuing to look at numbers across Indian universities for base rates of women. We're also, of course, continuing to document conferences that are being held in India. But in addition to this, we have been engaging in other activities to encourage including women in conferences, such as providing a conference supplement of up to 10,000 rupees for conferences that feature at least 30% women. We've also helped conduct conferences that feature only women speakers to showcase talented women scientists of India. The first conference of this series, Neurofarm India, was held in April 2021. We've also recently started the Biosport India Peer Support Group Slack, which we hope will serve as a safe space for discussions and peer mentoring of early career researchers who identify as women or are from marginalized groups. And in the future, we also plan to fund women and students from marginalized backgrounds to take up summer internships in labs of women and other marginalized scientists. And I'd like to stop here by acknowledging all of the people that have been involved in Biosport India from its inception, including interns and volunteers. The funding for Biosport India comes from a grant that I received from the Embo Young Investigator Award. And ALBA Network actually supported our Neurofarm India conference. This is our Twitter handle, and this is our website. Please do visit us and keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi. If you have any questions for her, please either raise your hand or type the questions into the chat box. In the meantime, someone has messaged me with a question for an earlier speaker. This is from Aarti Girdhar. She says, great information being shared. Are there any opportunities for doing projects with mentorship provided by organizations like Yazamiot or We? This is for the Israeli speakers.
So I hope Ila and Karen are still in the crowd. If not, surely we can have the name of this person that wants to connect, and we will do the connections. This is a great...
Sorry, I think the question is for India representative.
No, it is...
Because they're asking, are there any opportunities like We and Yazamiot in science from India?
Okay. I don't know who can answer it. I am not capable of answering this because I do not know anything about entrepreneurship. But in the meantime, can you tell us something about the programs you have for mentorship? Can you give us some details? Oh, and by the way, that person has said no, it's for people from Israel. But in the meantime, can Vaishnavi answer?
So mentorship in terms of, so the most recent activity that we've undertaken is the Biosport India Peer Support Group. So essentially, we have invited early career researchers who are within 7 years of having started their independent group to become part of this peer support network. Because we realized that one of the hardest things about being a minority in science is actually getting advice that could help you move to the next stage of your career. And this is something that happens quite organically if you typically are from the majority group. If you're, for instance, a man in Indian science, it's quite easy for you to find a mentor figure. This is not the same for minority groups. And so one of the things that we did in consultation with our advisory board that Shobna is also part of is start this Slack-based group where we've invited early career researchers to be part of, and we've only just initiated this about a month ago now, so it's still in the building stage. But we see that it could add great value to people and their experience in Indian academia to just navigate the landscape. This is quite complicated, of course, and with just a bit of even just somebody to hear you out when you have a rough day, I think it becomes much easier for you to navigate the system.
I also have a question about collecting data. Have you found it easy or difficult? Do you find people cooperate?
No, so this is the thing. We rely on publicly available information on websites currently, and as you probably are aware, it rarely websites are rarely updated frequently. So that is an issue. But in addition to that, it is currently it's Shruti and I leading the charge, and we have interns who help us from time to time. But the problem has been for us to actually maintain a list. We've just included about 102 universities and institutes. But we really do hope that there is a push from the funding agencies to make this data publicly available and for them to ask universities for a gender audit. And I think people should expect that of the Indian funding agencies, because of course, that is knowledge, that is information that should be publicly available to the scientists that currently work in India. So this has been extremely challenging for us. And of course, we can't stop after we've done one round of even all the institutes. Even if we did all the institutes in one go, we'd have to keep doing this periodically so that we have updated numbers. And it's, for us, humanly impossible to keep doing this on our own. So we do urge, I mean, if there are still people from DST in the meeting, we urge you to consider this moving forward.
I have one last question for you. Do you find that people are responsive? Like if you flag a manel, are people apologetic, or do they say they won't do this next time, or do you feel you're having an impact?
We've had a whole range of responses to when we flag any content. So what we do at using our Twitter handle is actually not to only call out manel. So we essentially all the information we put out alongside quote tweeting a poster for a conference day. What we do is actually just say proportion of women speakers, 3 out of 10 or whatever, and then say base rate of women in that particular field, let's say physics. This is all we say. We do not make a judgment call, just to be objective about the numbers. And our followers usually retweet or quote tweet and call it out. And we have had a whole range of responses to when this happens. So we don't explicitly call out something as being a manel, for instance. We just say this is what it is, and our followers usually do that, do the calling out for us. And when that happens, we've had a whole range of responses, ranging from you do not know how hard it is to organize a conference, going all the way to yes, we're sorry about this and we'll do something better. But we've seen more of the former than the latter, unfortunately. And yeah, it's been hard to keep ourselves going, but every once in a while there's a positive impact which helps us keep going.
Okay, thank you, Vaishnavi. Karen, I'm told you're online. Do you have anything to say to the question asked by Aarti?
Karen?
Yeah, I've just answered that we definitely can do that. And if someone wants to create a mutual program, they're more than welcome to contact us with the mail I added in the chat. And you can also see our LinkedIn page and see our activity, and to decide if you want to be involved in any of these activities.
Okay, thank you so much. And over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Shobna. Before introducing our next speaker, I will just say that Yazamiyot community is working international, and they do have a nice web internet, so a website in the internet. Being a director in this community several years ago, I was a part of launching it, so you might as well use it. And they really want to go and work with people in India, so yes, please contact them. And
yes.
If you need help in reaching them.
Yes.
Okay.
Just
so,
sorry, I dropped off. Yeah, I'm here just to say I'm sorry. Yes, of course, we're very open to working globally, and we already have some mentors that have contacted us, and we're happy to have them over in our office hours, various programs, delegations. courses. So we are really open, and please contact us either on the website or me directly on LinkedIn or anywhere else. I'll put my email here as well.
Great. Thank you, Ila. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce you Professor Rachel Erard, which amongst all other virtues, she's also a valued member in our academy committee. Professor Erard combines a longer career academy, practice, and social activism. Upon her appointment in 2012 as the University President Advisor for Gender Equality, she initiated the Israeli University President's Advisors Forum. Under her leadership, the forum has developed a national program of advancing gender equality in universities, which was adapted by the Authority of Higher Education here in Israel. The program is implemented since then, and intensive progress of changes is going now. Professor Erard will talk about breaking through the stubborn gender gap in academia. Rachel, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Sharon, and I'm very excited being here. And as I traveled few times to India and worked there for short periods of time, so I'm really excited to be again with colleagues from India. There is no need to explain in this respectable form that the engagement of women in STEM is first and almost dependent on their socialization in general and education in particular, holding in mind the wide meaning of socialization, culture, home, beliefs, attitudes, experiences, and so on. So the final stage before a woman walks into the labor market and decides upon her career is the system of higher education, on which I will focus now. I will present...
Can you change your presentation mode? Because we see everything.
You see it?
Everything, לתצוגת מציג. אנחנו רואים גם את השקפים שבצד.
Okay. So you know already that it's 12 slides. Okay. Anyway.
I think you need to tell her to share the desktop rather than the window.
Okay, just a second. So I'm switching to Hebrew.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
רחל, כרגע את לא משתפת שום דבר.
אני לא משתפת?
לא.
כרגע?
תעשי פשוט בתצוגת מציג, שזה יהיה במסך מלא. עכשיו את זה תהפכי למסך מלא.
רגע, one minute, one second. Otherwise it will be, and you ignore it, just as we are multitasked always.
But can you just check that you can advance your slides? Because sometimes in this mode you can't advance.
Here it is. That's the first slide. It's okay. Yeah, and so these slides present, as you can see the table, Israel is the last. You see at the bottom, in the rate of women professors, only 10% in STEM professions women are represented. You see it and I wrote on the side what natural sciences, engineering, anyway, a very the lowest rate in comparison. Now, the figures are depressing and surprising, as first of all, for thousands of years, the Jewish nation holds the name of Am HaSefer. It means that we're studying all the time, and learning has a high value. And second, we are known as the startup nation, and you might expect a higher percentage of women in STEM. The disappointment is even greater considering the two coming tables. First, it's the rate of women among doctoral students, and you see how it jumps between the years, and previously, Nisha mentioned that in your country, in India, it's only 40%. We are more than 52% of women graduating with PhD, and in STEM, it's 30%. So it means that we have a wide and rich pool of women candidates for position in academia in the future. The next slide shows the scissor phenomena, the known scissor phenomena, a comparison between 10 years. And what we see here, that the rate of change is very small, 0.5% per year. In other words, the academy still recruit men in spite of the fact that the number of women candidates grow so fast. Therefore, we define the gap as stubborn. We have the pool and a very low rate of recruitment. So now I move to the initiative and describe it. Upon my appointment at Tel Aviv University as the president advisor of gender equity, and I emphasize the word equity because we see the institution as not morally and behaviorally fair toward women, not as it's women problem. Anyway, I was appointed. Nobody knows what stands behind the title. And so therefore I invited my colleagues in the other universities, and you can count the universities in our country on 2 hands. And we were to meet together. We were very happy to consult, support, share ideas, and understand the hit practices that maintain the men's hegemony. And that it was such an insight to observe and to see how it works. And after a period of time, we realized that we have, in order to break through the stubborn gap, and it's stubborn, we have 5 president advisors. We worked together as a team and presented a strategic program to the Authority of Higher Education. It was accepted with flying colors, and even a small budget was allocated for us, and it was exactly what we needed, a frame to our work. The vision of the initiative is quite very simple. You see, a gender equality in Israeli universities, and the equality expected is the number of senior academic faculty, half and half, as we have this rich pool of candidates, and the number of key positions, as most 99% of the position of president, general manager, deans, and everything, provosts are held by men. The principles of our work is first to build a community, critical mass of women scientists with pro-gender leadership identity, and build it inter-universities so it will be a horizontal mass of women and within each university. At the same time, and the third objective is to establish a strong pool of researchers who are in the early or mid stages of their academic careers. As I mentioned, socialization. So we believe that it's a part of our mission is to prepare young scientists to take over roles of decision-making and policy making. So the strategy we choose or we build, constructed, it's more precise. First of all is social ecological model, as it's very obvious. It has to be a systemic change, and specific initiatives that are very, very important and meaningful. But in order to make a deep structural change, we have to see all the system, and this model is known and very useful in our work. First of all, the microsystem is the young woman researcher or the woman researcher in providing empowerment, knowledge, mentoring, management skills, budgeting, and so on. And so we have to take care about it. The mesosystem is the department or the school in the university, the small system that the scientist, the researcher belong to in recruitment. That's the main point in teaching duties, committees, and all the work and attitude that occurs there. Then we talk about the exosystem, that's the academic institute, the university, college, or the research institute, and mainly it's the climate, culture, awareness of unconscious biases, nomination, appointment, and presentation in conferences, as we heard, and what's done really in the institute. And the macro system is all the government bodies, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Science, as is represented here, finance, the Authority of Higher Education, and more and more and more. So that was the main point all the time, seeing all the system and trying to work with all parts of the system, because it's so dynamic and it's so interactive. So that's the way we believe too. It's very important. And then you can see it's bottom up and top down simultaneously all the time. All the spectrum is taken care. Representation of all universities, that's very important. And actually in Israel, it's quite easy because, as I said, it on two hands, and focus on STEM. As we saw earlier, the gap between men and women is so obvious in STEM and so needed. So how we are working? We are working according to the objective and principle. We develop workshops for different career stages. You can see a few examples: young PI, young researchers in the pre-tenure phase. That's the most difficult stage, returning from the postdoc, usually with a young family, and we are a pro-children country, so 2, 3, 4 children, and in 5 years getting the tenure at the university. So we work with young PI, mid-career form, it's researchers with tenure, to enrich the knowledge, skills of academic management in this maze. Who decides, what decides, how decides, and so to understand the rules of the game. It's not easy. Then we have the task force form, it's professors from senior positions, not anymore dependent on recommendation and promotion, and proactive, targeted toward decision-making position. So we are out to the outer world and the bodies that decide about the policies. And we have a very active another form, we call it the Dreamers Forum. It's faculty members in all stages of the career, that they are very active. They work in small teams, and what was presented earlier, the bias watch. India, we didn't do it so sophisticated as it was presented by Vishnia, but think that we will learn from you a lot how to do it very quantitative and clear. And so, and a lot of activity is done with the groups. There are ongoing groups and working, and so it accumulates all the time more and more young PI, mid-career, the task force, and the dreamers, and it's going on. And now, just to have a look on what are our achievements, it's the fourth year. The Authority of Higher Education gave us a grant for 2 years and now more 3 years. So we at the mid of the doing, and we can look back and have some formative evaluation. On the national level, we established Israeli Women Professor Association. And on the 1st of January, we will start the registration to the organization, and hopefully most of the women professors will be members. Already, we started to position our initiative in the dialogue, and it's going well with the Authority of Higher Education, the Israeli Academy of Science, Young Academy, Ministry of Science, and it's really becoming a dialogue between the two parties. Now, on the university levels, we see a change, structural changes, and that's the move between declaring and talking about it's a need and how important it is, what we all of us used to hear, and to action. And structural changes are taking place because in the universities, as our plan is working like a matrix, it's horizontal and vertical. So in each university, a strong body of a researcher, women researcher, from all stages of career development, suddenly, you know, they are together like a body in the institute. And for example, at Ben Gurion University, it's in the south, they changed the regulation and now they call it 50-50, 50% in the committees where the decisions are accepted and people are recruited and promoted. And so at the Weizmann Institute, they formed a body called GET, Gender Equity Together, and also structural changes at the Technion in the north. Actually, we see an active groups in the universities and institutes, and we are so happy to see also in the faculties. For example, we have a workshop program, a mentoring, for example, at Tel Aviv University, the Dean of Precise Sciences, Professor Tova Milo. It's the first time that a dean, a woman, and they started a beautiful program of mentoring that each stage of the career mentor another stage. So the seniors, the juniors, and doctoral students, the master and master bachelor degrees. So all the faculty and the schools, each of the school, mathematics, physics, chemistry, they structure a very clear and a program for everybody is seen and is active.
And Rachel, you have 2 minutes?
Yeah, it's enough. Exactly. It's the
Yay.
Yeah, it's okay. And top down. So everything was as we started, young, we went up, and top down, it's the Equator program, the Council of Higher Education. And we're very happy that we stimulated the Authority of Higher Education to develop the program and allocate resources and took the responsibility, our initiative took the responsibility of training and supervising the president advisor that will implement the program. So actually, we are exactly at the start of a program. Each institute applied separately. It was approved or with comments and changes or not approved. And our initiative will, the two groups of president's advisor in the colleges apart and the university apart, work with them, follow them, help them, supervise them, and all what's needed to move this change of the stubborn gap. So we have now a good feeling that we are on the right way, and what works is solidarity and hard work. To be stubborn, as we are fighting the stubborn gap, we are very stubborn and work hard to fulfill the vision. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Rachel, for a great talk, but moreover for this excellent work that you're doing in order to advance women in the somewhat masculine environment of the higher education institutes. So I see that there are no questions, and I am not sure. Amit, please help me out here. Are there any questions?
No, I didn't see any questions. I didn't see any questions.
Okay, so thank you again, Rachel, and Shobna, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we will have a set of talks about the lives of women in science. So our first speaker is Nanita Jairaj. She's an independent science journalist, editor, and storyteller who is interested in the contributions and journeys of underrepresented groups in science. She's the co-founder of the award-winning feminist science media platform, thelifeofscience.com. She's also an author of several children's books, her latest being Ratna and the Ring of Fire and 31 Fantastic Adventures in Science. Nandita, over to you.
Hi, hello, Shobana. I hope I'm audible. Just stop me.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just start sharing my slides. Can you see?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Shobana. I'm glad to address a very different kind of audience than I'm usually used to addressing, but I feel like these are the kinds of audience that have most potential to create some sort of impact in what we're all talking about. So hello. As Shobana said, my name is Nanita Jairaj. I co-founded a feminist science media platform. These are words that generally don't go together, but it's called thelifeofscience.com, and it's been around since 2016 or so. I thought that it'll be useful to just take a couple of minutes to brief you on what we do so that you understand the perspective that I'm coming from and where these ideas that I'm sharing with you are coming from. So what we do at thelifeofscience.com is we started off as a blog where two of us science writers were traveling across the laboratories of India, speaking with the women doing science in them, women that we find there. And we started reporting these and publishing these interviews and in various formats and various multimedia formats, because we wanted the stories to be really engaging and journalistic and accessible to all kinds of science and non-science audiences. Most of our work is based on in-depth and in-person interviews. Of course, since COVID last year, we have been facing a few limitations and some of our interviews are now online, but we consider it important to try our best to be on the scene so we actually witness and experience the scientific atmosphere that these women are functioning in, and that really helps us in our storytelling process as well. So our project has been, I mean, we nicknamed it lab hopping, so it's also known as lab hopping because we're hopping across labs. Over the years, the lifeofscience.com has also sort of become a platform where we have been able to collaborate with and mentor emerging science media makers, science writers, science artists, and these are a burgeoning number because increasing number of PhD students or young people in science are coming into communications and looking for platforms to do so. So we've been also able to partner with dozens of such young people across the country. This is just a slide sharing with you a small glimpse of some of our work. This map just shows you the locations of the labs that we visited so far. There's still a few states that we haven't visited yet and hope to do so in the future. And a screenshot of our website, what it looks like right now, some of our latest articles, and also the cover of a book that I co-wrote with my co-founder Ashima, which is on 31 contemporary Indian women in science. We have a very successful Twitter series that is going on right now, where since January 1st of this year, we've been highlighting the work of an Indian woman in science every single day. And I think we consider this a success, not just for us, but also for the whole scientific community, because all of these women featured are being nominated by others in the scientific community. So it's really a display of allyship and an answer to anybody who may say that we do not have enough women in science. So if you are on Twitter and you just check out this hashtag, you can see the so far 300 plus women that we have featured. Now I'll go on to the crux of my talk, which is just to discuss some of the patterns that we have discovered in our hundreds of interviews with women in science, and many of these have been discussed also by other speakers, I believe. But I'll get into what we have seen. It starts at the very beginning because as a developing country, we still have challenges at a very fundamental level. We're still a country which has about 30% of our women are not yet literate, and which is a much higher percentage than the illiterate men in our country. And there are still millions of girls who are estimated to drop out from schools every year due to various reasons, including reasons like lack of sanitation facilities. So I just wanted to bring this up because to discuss the problems of women in science is in some senses a luxury, because there are people having, for whom even primary education is still a hurdle. Moving on from that, I think for those of us who are lucky enough to enter science, to enter science, to start studying and pursuing sciences, young women, girls in science, there are a few more hurdles that crop up for them right then. I think this is probably so in many countries, but in India especially, we still have the same sort of expectations of a reasonably early marriage and having children at the right time, as they say, and this is often cited as the main reason that women are dropping out. And there is this illusion that women are dropping out by choice, because many women say that I want to devote myself to motherhood. So we see this as a non-problem. We see this as, okay, the system can't do anything if it's her choice. But because we have spent a couple of hours with each woman in science that we've interviewed, we understand that it's not such a black and white situation. Many of them are completely in love with science and amazing at science, but it's just that they do not see science as a space where they can also focus on bringing up their children. So we really feel that it's important to turn the narrative into why is science seen as a place where motherhood cannot be accommodated, and we need to go. I think some policies are slowly reflecting that. The societal expectations for women also manifest in other ways, in the way of bias against women at hiring, which often we would like to think does not exist anymore, but in fact it does. We have met multiple people who have been discriminated against. Of course, if they are a mother of a young child, that makes them an unattractive candidate because they are assumed to not, they will not be able to commit to science in the way science demands. That we've also met married women without children who are not hired because the hiring committee feels that she is likely to have children soon. And we've also met unmarried women who are not hired because somebody on the hiring committee thought, okay, she's probably going to get married in the next couple of years, so let's not hire her. So these are all real situations that we have witnessed or people have shared with us. But again, thankfully, even though it's a small number, there are, maybe about 20% of women who are able to enter the scientific workforce and become, principal investigators or faculty at universities or research institutes. But the next level of hurdles is now they have to rise. They have to rise to the top. They have to progress in their career. And the primary hurdles to this is everyday sexism, which is quite normalized among women in science, just as it is in any other professional space. But somehow we expect that science would be immune to it, but it's not. And it's not. It's quite common quite common for us to have conversations with women who say they have been at the end of irrelevant comments about what they're wearing or their personal goings on in their life, who they're married to, or if they're divorced. And, these kind of conversations are not considered unprofessional, unfortunately, in a lot of our professional science spaces. So we have seen that successful women in science are able to take these in their stride. But the question is, should they have to? And is it fair that those who are unable to tolerate these kind of conversations and this kind of sexism are driven out of science spaces? Is that a fair occurrence? Should we be allowing that to happen? Women's abilities are constantly doubted is also something that we have seen. We have, I have various examples for this, but I won't get into it right now. But this is also why the phenomenon of imposter syndrome becomes extra strong for women compared to men. It's because they are having to prove themselves at every step. And there are several famous women in science who have spoken about this, like Jocelyn Bell Burnell and many, many others. So this is something that we've also seen reflected in Indian women in science. There is also the other sort of microaggressions, as we call it, about women being given less scientific tasks and being put on committees which are seen as more women friendly, which are less rigorous and less scope for opportunities and meeting powerful people. And I also want to bring up the fact that we do have a lot of transgender persons in science who are never discussed. And for these people, it's a matter of often suppressing their actual gender identities for a chance at being treated well and for a chance at being allowed to continue doing their science. But we do not have yet a work atmosphere that is sensitive to the impact this has on one's mental health. The effect of not being allowed to be yourself is quite traumatic, and this is also a reason why a lot of trans students in science are dropping out of universities. Before I wrap up this section, I just want to say the sexual harassment is just as frequent in science as it is in other spaces. However, in India, we have a respect for scientists which is a good thing, but it manifests in a way that gives them impunity from the most terrible of things. And it's especially hard when the power dynamics are so imbalanced, as with if it was a PI, if it was a professor who was misbehaving with a student. But very recently we saw a case of sexual harassment at a top engineering college at an IIT in India, which was a student case. And even there, this became a police case, and the student who was a rape accused male student was given bail because the High Court deemed him talented and a future asset to the country because he came from a very exclusive engineering college. So these kind of things are still happening in STEM, which one could say is quite unscientific. So now, I mean, the next, I mean, when it comes to women trying to, reach the very top positions, administrative positions, they have to reach some sort of benchmarks like win awards or be invited to conferences as speakers. So the other sort of Indian, maybe South Asian thing that we see is that most science spaces in India are still very gender segregated. This ends up with women in science not having as many powerful friends and men of science as their male peers. And as a result, conference organizers claim that they cannot think of any women to invite as speakers. And this is why the work of Shruti and Vaishnavi at Biosport India is very important, because how long can jury say that they cannot think of any women to nominate for awards? A prime example for this is this year's Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Awards, which is the Indian government's one of the probably the biggest award that they have for scientists by the Indian government, and they awarded 11 winners across all fields of science, and there was 0 women awardees this year. Even in biology, they could not find one single woman to who they felt was worthy of winning a prize. So there is a long way that we still have to go. Before I wrap up the findings that we have done, I also want to say that not all women in India are affected equally, and at the same time, not all men are unaffected by these problems. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of intersections that make some women maybe even more privileged than some groups of men. Yeah, so I don't want to get into that too much, but I would urge you to go through some of the stories that we have written on our website if you want to know more. How many minutes do I have left, Shobana?
You have about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Plus
great.
question time.
Sure. So there are also a few problems that we see that scientists on the whole face, which is, hurdles that are faced by scientists in India, and probably in any other country has its share of hurdles to overcome for a scientist to be able to do their best science. Even with these apparently neutral problems, there is a need to look at it through a sociological lens, through a gender lens, or in India through a caste lens. If, for example, if you're talking about, we have a lot of schemes, we have, but there is still highly inadequate funding that is kept for science in India, and often these funding, even when it's there, it's received very, very late. There are huge problems of delays of receiving funding and red tape. So this is, on the surface, it seems like a problem that would affect all women, all scientists equally. But we have to think about ultimately the people who are able to stay in science are the ones who are able to who are able to continue doing their science despite not receiving their fellowship for a year. Who are these people? The people who are socioeconomically privileged. So that is that is a problem. That is how some students, some scientists are affected more by these seemingly neutral problems than others. The same thing applies for things like the scientific culture of having extremely long hours at work, having to work 12 to 15 hours a day. Who are the kinds of people who are able to do this? Often they are people who have someone at home to take care of the domestic duties, and who have do not have to worry about that, and can afford to be fully committed to science. So there is a need to look at these neutral problems also through gender and caste lens, and then we can think of how to move ahead. So I mean, I am pretty much done. I just wanted to say that I think we are not in a terrible place, but as journalists who are covering the issue of women in science, one of the biggest hurdles we face is this resistance to critique. There is, even though we're talking about science, which is all about questioning, the culture of critique is very much missing from our from the way science is being administered in India. So how can we create an atmosphere that women in science are not afraid to talk openly about their experiences, where anybody can call out mistakes by those in power, like Biosport India is calling out manners, and many of the scientists we've interviewed have called out their administration on various kind of injustices. But we have to reach a place where they're able to do this without worrying about retaliation in some form. And we have to recognize that bringing up issues, scientists bringing up issues, or journalists bringing up issues is not pessimism. It is just wanting better for science and scientists in our country. We have uncovered some of the most empowering stories of science from those who dare to complain, or who are refusing to follow the path that society and the system set for them. We should celebrate the fighting spirit of our scientists and not stifle them. And the scientists that I'm talking about here are often not the award winners. They may be in colleges teaching hundreds of students a year and doing research on the side, on the weekends, on the summer, just to keep their love for science alive. They may be in NGOs because they
Nanita, can you wrap up in 2 minutes, please?
Yes, I'll wrap up in a minute. They may be in NGOs because they did not get a coveted faculty position. Maybe they're trying to use their science to create more grassroots level change, or they may be lab technicians who are doing the grunt work behind big discoveries that we read about in newspapers. So we just need to open our eyes to see these contributions and listen to their stories, and we'll realize that our country has all the assets that it would probably need. And we just, the science community, the independent media, the government just need to meet each other halfway, and I think it's going to be smooth sailing if we can just get there. So I will sign off just with sharing with you our URL if you want to read some of the stories that we've written, and also our social media handles. We're an independent project, so we're constantly crowdfunding, and that's how we keep alive. So you're welcome to support us there as well. That's all from me. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think we are missing Shobna for a minute. So I will thank Nanita.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm so sorry.
Okay. So it's okay. I will just thank Nanita on your behalf. Are there any questions that are addressed to Nanita, or can we move forward?
No, the chat is empty.
Okay, right on time. So I'm delighted to present Dr. Avital Beck as a great example for a woman scientist and entrepreneur. Prior to co-founding her startup company, which is called Diagnostic, and she will tell you all about it, Avital spent over 6 years in the Israeli biotech industry as a research and development scientist and an IP manager. She received a Bachelor of Science in Biotechnology from Bar-Ilan University, and her PhD track followed by 2 postdoctorates at the Weizmann Institute of Science. Avital's expertise extends to molecular cell biology, diabetes, stem cell research, microbiology, and bioinformatics. And if you don't think it is enough, please know that she is also the mother of 7 children and a social activist who promotes female minorities in STEM and high-tech. Avital, we are ready to hear your story. Avital?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, so wait, I'll just share. Okay, how do I see this?
יש לך באמצע חץ למעלה פתח מגע שיתוף. יופי.
Do you see it?
רגע. Yes, but put it in full mode.
It's on full. Do you see it full? No?
Not yet. Not yet.
I see it full.
Okay.
Now you do?
No, we still see like a regular PowerPoint. Yeah.
So wait, I don't know why.
Okay, try.
Can you hear?
Put it on presentation mode?
It's on presentation mode.
Okay.
Avital, did you share just the window or the whole screen? It usually helps to share the whole screen. the whole desktop.
Oh, wait. Okay, I apologize. I don't use Teams usually.
Yes, all of us had the same difficulties, but maybe you'll just stop sharing, and then once you'll start share again, you'll see that you have two options, either the whole screen
Yeah,
or only
but
one.
then it doesn't. Then it doesn't see. It doesn't see it.
Okay.
So okay, so I'll
Did
have
you
to
send?
do it this way.
Did you
I'll
send
have to do
the?
it this way.
Okay.
Wait. I'll have to do it this way. You see? It's still
Yes.
on. I see it on full screen, so never mind. Okay,
No.
so nice to meet you all. I'm Dr. Avital Beck. I don't see you, so this is pretty strange. I am the CEO, CSO, and co-founder of Diagnostic. I did, as Sharon introduced me, thank you, Sharon. By the way, I did my PhD in molecular biology in the Weizmann Institute of Science. I'm an expert in diabetes, stem cell, breast milk, and I'm an entrepreneur. I actually opened with a colleague my startup about 4 years ago. I was in the biotech industry, and I felt, well, I actually felt pretty bored as a scientist in the regular biotech industry. And I thought, and I had the vision to open my own startup. Having said that, I didn't know anybody from my society. I'm an Orthodox woman. I didn't know anybody that had a startup, opened a startup, or had anything to do with this world. It was totally me and Google opening the startup. And then I actually, my friends came in too. My colleague here, Dr. Hadass Shatz-Azulai, also did a PhD in molecular biology. And little by little, we started doing this and learning from the internet how exactly to open a startup, how to build a presentation, how to get connections, how to network. And this is what has been done. I'm also
Avital, are you advancing your slides? Because we are still seeing the cover slide.
Yes, I am advancing my slide.
Yeah, we're still seeing the first slide, unfortunately.
This is not working. So wait, I'm stopping. I don't see you.
Maybe
yes,
you
I'm advancing my.
Maybe you can send your presentation to Amit, and she will run it for you.
Yeah, no problem.
Maybe you can do it by WhatsApp, and she will just run it for you.
Whatever is more convenient, Avital, I'm here.
It just doesn't work. It's not. I mean, it can't. It could only see the internet. It can't see my desktop.
Can you send it to me by email or WhatsApp? I'm gonna upload for you, and when you say I'll switch the slides for you.
Sure. Yeah. So, because I do see it, it's just not.
So you will use yours, and we will see what Amit is broadcasting.
Okay. So on. I could actually talk without a presentation as well, but I think
no, it's not. It's not a problem for us to share it while you're talking. So
but turn on your camera.
I send it to you here. It's on. It's on. Sharon, I sent to you via WhatsApp.
Okay, so I'll check.
So
keep on talking. Yes, maybe you keep on talking. I don't see anything in my WhatsApp yet.
Maybe it takes a minute because it's heavy. Well, I will keep on talking, and
yes, please.
And you also the slide. Okay, so we've actually started our own venture, and together with my colleague, as I am a mother of 7 and she is a mother of 5, we came to the conclusion that by combining our passion to family and children and combining the passion to science, because we're both scientists, so we actually came with an idea of femtech. Startup, the fem startup, who are not getting a response to pains that we have to know that. Did you get it?
No,
Sean?
I didn't get it. No, I didn't get it, and you are kind of breaking. We hear you in breaks, like it's a problem of communication.
Okay, I'm in the office. I'm fully communicated, so I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't do anything. So, and did you get the presentation?
No. Maybe it's too heavy.
But just tell us about it. Talk about the presentation.
Okay. Yes, that's
okay. So now I got it, and I'm
okay. So
just forward.
I
will forward it to Amit.
So we actually, okay. So we actually developed a platform that, on the one hand, we develop logical equity inside breast milk, and by colorimetric reactions, you could get an app, a cellular app, a mobile app that you could take a picture. Can you hear me?
I at least cannot hear her.
Maybe may I suggest something? I got the presentation. Maybe if Avital will, the rest of will switch their video off so we can hear better, and I will share your presentation, Avital, now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I apologize. This is
no problem.
Something I do 20 times a day.
Not on Teams. This is the first time.
No, not on Teams. No, I did use Teams from time to time.
Do you see Avital's presentation?
Yes.
I don't.
Okay, so just I'm going to slide. Just tell me where to stop, Avital.
I don't see the presentation.
Oh.
Yes, we can see it.
I can see it, but I also see only the first slide.
Okay,
yes.
so
maybe it's because it's in PPTX and not.
No, just a second. Maybe something again in the share. Shobna, I did what he told me. I'm sharing the whole desktop, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, just a sec again. Just a second. Okay, again. Share desktop. Okay, now you're gonna see my desktop. What are you seeing? Are you seeing my desktop?
Yes.
Okay, so just a second. Now do you see the present? Do you see the next slide?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Avital, which slide should I go to?
She's no longer with us. Okay. So maybe we will move forward to our next speaker, and then if there will be a solution for this problem, we will get back to Avital. Shobana, what do you
I don't
think?
know. Maitri, are you already there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Would you be ready to go forward?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. So our next speaker will be Maitri Gopalkrishna. She's a drama therapist, counseling psychologist, theater maker, and practice researcher. She has a PhD from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences and an MA in Counseling Psychology with a concentration in drama therapy from the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. I3 works in community building, preventative care, mental health support, psychotherapy, and training in a variety of institutional and community contexts. She has experience working with various issues, including issues of gender, and she has been working with women in physics using techniques of drama therapy, which is what she's going to talk to us about now.
Thank you so much, and everybody else who's organizing this for inviting me here. I feel quite honored to be here. I'm going to just start sharing my slides, and I hope that I don't have a similar problem. It's also my first time on Teams, but let's give it a shot. Yes?
Yes, fine, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Just give me 1 minute. I'm just going to turn off my video as I cannot see myself. Okay.
Now we don't see your screen anymore, your slides. Yeah. Make it full screen. Okay.
All right. Like Shobana said, I'm a drama therapist and a counseling psychologist, and I have a particular interest in how systemic issues like gender, caste, stereotypes, etc., affect the mental health of an individual and by extension, their work. So when Shobana invited me to facilitate these sessions for women in physics, I was very interested to do it. But before I go into that, I thought I'd give you a little brief about what drama therapy is. There's a definition here on the slide. It's the intentional and systematic use of drama or theater methods and processes to achieve psychosocial growth and change. The tools are from theater, while the goals are either in psychology or in social justice or social change work. So drama therapy typically can be used in two places. One is in clinical work that are dealing with mental health distress or even mental illness. Here, typically, if they're dealing with a diagnosed illness, I work in tandem with other mental health professionals like psychologists or psychiatrists. And the aim there is to look at symptom management to help with occupational and social functioning. But the other part of my work that I find very interesting is when I work with drama therapy on clinical spaces with groups that are not dealing with a common mental health distress, but actually have a common identity. So for example, in this case, I was working with groups of women who were physicists. So that was one common identity. And the other common identity was that they were all women, or they all identified as women. Here, the goal of the work was really to enhance well-being, productivity, and to achieve certain common goals. We did this by first building common working agreements, developing a sense of group and ability to work together, sharing challenges and strengths, and then, of course, working through those challenges together. The aim also in these non-clinical spaces is to help the group develop shared vocabulary and processes that can be used in the absence of the facilitator. So really, my goal is to make myself redundant, and also for the group to be able to gather and share resources and networks amongst themselves so that this can become sort of self-sustaining in the long run. And of course, drama therapy is non-threatening, it's pleasurable, it's a creative process, and therefore it can sidestep some of the stigmas associated with mental health work. So why drama? Why not just talk about it? Well, it is active, creative, playful, and fun. It helps people create a sense really useful when group members speak different languages at different levels. So for example, for the women's groups that we were running in ICTP, these were women from across the world, particularly from different developing nations in Africa, in Asia, and South America, and so on. And nobody was equally fluent in the same language. So because the modality is very visual, because we use metaphors, because we use so much, it doesn't matter that you're not speaking English fluently or any common language fluently. It doesn't matter as much. It also allows the possibility to externalize, concretize, and visualize intrapsychic activity. Basically, that is whatever's going on inside my mind, I can put it out. I can see it performed. My group members can, for example, embody each different thought that I have in my head in a particular moment. So if I have conflicting thoughts, I can actually see it depicted outside me as a tableau or a scene. It offers opportunities to practice new or desired behaviors. So for example, if I want to have a conversation with my boss, I can actually rehearse it. I can try it out in this space. And there is growing research and evidence to support the value of embodied processes in education and in therapy. Engaging the body in learning accelerates skills and conceptual and aids retention. There is the possibility for non-linear processing of an experience. So for example, when there is a traumatic experience, typically the experience is encoded in a non-linear or a layered or an intersecting way. And when we use a method that can kind of process it also in a non-linear way, it seems to be more efficacious. And thirdly, we can directly engage with the effects of an experience on the body by body. So when we practice new behaviors, for example, the gap between planning or thinking about doing something and actually doing it in real life tends to decrease. And people are able to make changes easier when they've actually practiced the change that they want to make. So these career development workshops for women in physics happen every other year at the International Center for Theoretical Trieste. So I've been able to facilitate these drama therapy sessions in 2015, 17, 19, and then this year was quite different. We did it online. So here we are seeing the group finding common ground and brainstorming challenges. We do all of our work standing, moving, in action. So there isn't much sitting on chairs and talking, which is quite different, I think, for scientists. But it seems to bring a different sort. Challenges here are on the right. They are very similar to the challenges that Nanita Jairaj spoke about in her research. So I won't go into each of them in detail. I'll give you a few examples. For example, this year, very interestingly, one of the participants brought up power harassment. So this is where a superior person is deploying their power in a way that is harassing, but it's not actually sick. The second point on social and professional isolation, another participant spoke about how they are the only woman in the lab. This keeps coming up. I think a lot of women here have said, I'm the only person, being the only woman in the room, right? So again, this comes up all the time in these sessions. This person said, I'm the only woman in the lab. At the end of a work day, typically all of the others will go out together. We'll go out for a drink, or we'll go out for a meal, or we'll hang out together. I will not get invited. I don't know if this is because they feel awkward, because in my culture, women and men don't hang out so much. But the impact of that is that this particular individual misses out. She misses out on networking. She misses out on little planning, conversations that happen about the work, but outside the workspace. Many other examples, getting extra care, administrative work. Women often talk about being put on committees, sexual harassment committees, like, student affairs committees, much more than men, so they have all of these additional work that they have to do. Needing to be super women, that means I have to be excellent at my physics, I have to be excellent mother, I have to be, excellent colleague, I have to be able to play all of these roles superiorly well so that nobody feels like I am letting them down, and so on and so forth. Burnout, imposter syndrome, mental health. What we do is then we break up into groups, and each group develops a scene. And in the scene, we ask people to show the problem, not really look at the solution yet. That we will do together. So I thought I'd share with you a couple of the scenes that were developed in the 2017 edition. So here's the first scene. Marie, a fictional name, tells her parents she wants to do science. They dissuade her. You are not smart enough. Pick a career where you can have a family easily. You can't be more educated, then who will marry you? Cut to a few weeks later, Marie tells her friends she wants to do science. They dissuade her too. You want to keep studying? How will you make money? Cut to a few years later. To one boss, she says she needs lab time for research. She is a better communicator and she has these motherly instincts. A few weeks later, a second boss tells her she needs to quit as she complains too much. Another scene, a department meeting with all men and one woman, Ella. The woman's idea is not heard, and Michael, a male colleague, speaks over her and gets credit for the idea. Michael later invites Ella to a party and suggests that she loosens up and hangs with the boys. He also jokingly says she'd look really good in a swimsuit. So the scene is set up, and then what we do is that we use drama interventions to work through these challenges. In the first case, and in both these cases, what we did is we used a technique called forum theater, which is developed by a Brazilian theater practitioner. Other members of the group to come in, take the position of the protagonist and do what they would do in that place. So you take the position of Marie or Ella and do what would you say? What would you do if you were in her position? There's a huge difference between saying what to do, that is giving advice, and actually putting yourself in somebody else's place and doing that. There's a lot more clarity on how difficult it can be to take a step, but a lot more ingenious ideas that also get generated. Let me give you another example of a scenario. A postdoctoral researcher has to finish work. She can't. She's not sure why she can't. She doesn't ask for help. She loses energy and charge till she is completely down and calls her mother and says she wants to go home. After this, we did a process where we externalized what are the different thoughts going on in her head that stop her for asking for help. We invite different group members to take a position of each thought. So after she hears the thought and sees them, she then works on diffusing each of the thoughts. Yeah. Another scenario, a student is warned by the professor. He is a bit odd, be careful. These warnings are all very vague by her friends. Yet this is an influential professor. He invites the student to go out for dinner. The student is in two minds. She wants to be able to benefit from the networking and from developing some kind of a collegiate relationship with this professor, but also she wants to heed the warning of her friends. What does she do? So here again, we speaking up and giving these vague warnings. What could this student do if she wanted to go? Could she document? Could she ask for help? Could she take a friend with her? And then it automatically moves on to a conversation of what can you do in this situation. So we found these sessions to be quite powerful. There were three things that it seemed to have done. One is it built a sense of community and support and a sense of network. A lot of these women are still in touch with each other. And then, when they have problems now, they reach out to one another and they brainstorm things together. It seemed to offer some validation. My emotions are real. They affect my work. They affect my family, everything. So I cannot ignore them. I am not imagining things. This is real. What occurred has a name. And also, very importantly, it seems to create a sense of empowerment, motivation. I know there is something I can do about it. Bearing it or quitting it are not my only options. So at the end of the whole week of workshops that we do, we normally ask the participants, what is something that you are inspired to do when you return home? And this for me is very important, because it's not only important to be able to feel better and therefore be able to progress in your individual career, which in itself is a valuable goal, but also that we see that women can then go on to become agents of change in their own home countries, so that they're actually creating these solidarity networks, so that they're able to help other women, and not just women, but other men that might also be dealing with systemic issues. So thank you. I think I'll stop with this. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Maitri. Are there any questions? Maitri, I have a question for you. Is working with women in science different in any way than working with other groups?
I expected it to be very different. I expected that scientists, I don't know, I think coming from the arts, I expected that there would be a lot of resistance, that scientists, and you know, I've only worked with this particular group of women that are quite motivated, that perhaps have self-selected to come to these workshops. But I noticed that they were quite, I mean, these were remarkable women, and they were really willing to share, to collaborate, to work together. Stereotypes I had about scientists not wanting to get out of their chairs was, yeah, completely proved to be wrong in this situation. So I found that, of course, there are very unique characteristics of every single group. But I found that there was quite a lot of receptivity, quite a lot of eagerness and engagement. So it was not so different from many of the other women's groups I've done.
And do you, since it's an international group, do you see cultural differences amongst countries? I know that it's hard because you work with them for a limited time, but do you see differences or commonalities or both?
I think there's a lot of commonalities, and I think what ends up getting highlighted a lot is the commonalities, I think. But for sure, there are differences. So the way I see it is that there are systemic issues in science and I mean in physics, but there are also the systemic issues in each of these cultures, and together is what they can cause the barriers. So you have cultures, for example, where there's quite a segregation of women and men. And in those cultures, it's even harder for women to interact with male colleagues after work, for example, right? So I think the cultural differences for sure play out in terms of what are barriers for these women. But in that 1 week, there seems to be such a sense of solidarity and, you know, we are in this together, that what gets highlighted a lot are the commonalities, especially in terms of the challenge that they face as women in physics.
Okay, thank you. Sharon, thanks again, Maitri. Very interesting indeed. Of course, I was aware of your work from before. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you, Shabana. So unfortunately, Vital is facing a lot of difficulties, technical difficulties in reconnecting to the Teams platform. So we might as well move forward. But I have to check if our
Rinat is here.
Oh, Rinat is here. So great. So we are now reaching our last session that will focus on research institutes in the periphery. And I'm pleased to invite Ms. Rinat Jairaj, the Director of the Science and Community Division of the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, where she oversees governmental support for addressing social gaps through science education, creating the next generation of Israel's scientists, and promoting R&D in the periphery. Previously, Rinat served as the Director of Municipal of municipal something. I'm losing it. So Rinat will present the concept of research institutes in the periphery areas, and those are actually research institutes that Moist is supporting. Rinat, go ahead.
I will share Rinat's presentation. So just let me know, just a second.
Thank you.
So hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Rinat Shafran, and I'm the head of Science and Community Division in the Israel Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. The ministry, yeah, can you just switch it into presentation mode, please? Thanks. Can you make it, thanks, yeah, great. So the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology is proud to promote research and development in Israel, and particularly in the country's periphery. For over 40 years, we have provided yearly funding to 7 R&D centers in peripheral areas. I hope you see this large enough. Amit, you should go to the first one, the first category. עבור בין תצוגת מגיש להצגת שקופית.
Just a second.
Okay, thanks. So for over 40 years, we've provided a yearly funding to 7 R&D centers. The centers focused on applied research that seeks to address the needs and challenges of the regions. So this includes research in many different fields, including agriculture and supporting technologies, environmental science, social science. The centers support pioneering research and technologies while enabling Israel's finest scientists to live and work in the periphery of the country. They also play an important part in their communities by offering educational science workshops, mentoring for students, hosting science events that are open to the public. They could even mentor PhD students, research students. Some of these centers have numerous branches, which allows us to even greater reach. We're proud of the achievements of the R&D centers, and even more so of the representation of women in senior management positions in over half of the centers. We believe that this representation reflects on the role of Israel's diverse population, playing in creating a culture of excellence and achievement in science. We will hear now, so I just to show the map, we have 7 research institutions that come from like the upper north, the Galilee Research Institute, down to the south, Dead Sea and Arava. We have over 185 full-time researchers, over 250 publications, and over 10,000 community activities. We will today meet 2 women that are playing a management role in 2 of our institutes, and I'm proud to introduce. I think Sharon, you will be introducing the 2 of them. So thank you, everyone, and well done for this day today.
Thank you, Rinat, and my apologies. I was missing the 2 last rows, so I will complete it now. Rinat served as the director. No, I'm sorry. I was missing it. So just to finish it, that you were serving as the director of municipal development in the Ministry of the Interior, and she holds a graduate degree in public policy and political science, and they are both from the Hebrew University. And Rinat, thank you so much for introducing us with the research institutes in the periphery. So now it is a great pleasure for me to present Dr. Manal Haji Zaroubi. Manal did her first degree in natural sciences, chemistry and biochemistry. Her second degree was
in medical chemistry, and in 2003, she received her PhD from the Institute of Organic Chemistry and Biochemistry at the Technical University of Munich. Later on, she worked for 10 years as a senior chemist and a project manager at a pharmaceutical company. And in 2016, she joined the Institute of Applied Research at the Galil Society in Shfar'am at Israel. There she was a research associate. After 1 year, she became a researcher in the water, in the wastewater treatment and medicinal plants in the same institutes. So you'll see now that she has a lot of work that was being done, and her current research focus on exploring the potential and ultimately the utilization of organic components in the olive meal. So Manal, I will give you the floor to tell everything about your work in this research institute.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharon. It was quite an introduction. Let me first share my presentation, and I think it's here, and it's presentation mode. Let me see if it works. Okay, yes. Now you see my presentation? Okay, yes. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this nice conference, India and Israel Women in STEM, sharing ideas and initiatives. I was glad to hear most of the talks since the morning. My name is Manal Haj-Zaroubi, and I am working at the Institute of Applied Research of the Galili Society. So this is one of the research and development centers that are supported by the Ministry of Science and Technology, which are in the periphery, these R&Ds. At the moment, I am, I'm not going to talk again about, to introduce myself because we already heard it, but I am a chemist. I have a PhD in chemistry, in organic and biochemistry, and after I have worked for 10 years in Holland in a pharmaceutical company as a project manager for the chemist staff in the company for developing and producing new targets in compounds in chemistry. After 10 years working there, I just came back home with my family to join a year later as a postdoc position at the Institute of Applied Research. I have to say that, the Institute had welcomed me, even though my background was more in industry, but they said that this is also an important thing, that we also get people that they are not only have an academic background, but also an industry background. So I joined the team at the Institute as a postdoc working on a project. And after a year and something, I became a researcher because I have just led a project in wastewater treatment, and it was quite good. Working as I'm still a researcher at the Institute, and I have to say that when I started to work, there were no women researchers at all. They were all men. There were 10 researchers from different backgrounds, like chemical engineering, chemistry, microbiology, public health, and others. But there were no women at all, even though that the staff that worked in the Institute was more than 50% of it were women. But later on in my presentation, I will just talk more in details about this thing. From 2019 as well, I became the scientific director of the R&D center. And also I need to emphasize that I was the first woman who is directing scientifically this center. So women started to have getting serious roles and high positions in this kind of R&Ds. First of all, I would like to give you a small overview about the scientific center that was established in 1995, and also it is like we have two challenges. The first one is that we wanted to establish, or the researchers before me, they wanted to establish, they had a dream to establish an R&D that it would be the first research center that serves the Arab population in Israel. And at that time, they have 2-3 researchers that just won a grant from the Ministry of Science and Ministry of Agriculture. And they three researchers with a PhD in chemical engineering and biochemistry. They founded this caravan, if we look here, and this was our institute at that time. And they were very proud of it, and they had a big dream. They said that we wanted to be the kind of the Weizmann Institute of the Arab population. But I have also to admit, in this, after 1 or 2 years of this caravan, also and this is I would like in this occasion really to thank the Ministry of Science and Technology, because at that time, Dr. Miriam Waldman was having the position of being Director of Science and Community Division, and she really supported this caravan, and she gave an advice and her time to make this caravan an institute that it would be supported by the ministry. And yes, 1 or 2 years later, this caravan was really supported by the Ministry of Science and Technology. We moved from this caravan, it was in 1995. In 2008, this caravan became this nice building that is, of course, supported by the Ministry of Science and Technology and is affiliated with the University of Haifa. And as I said, it was the first research center that's serving the Arab population in Israel. When this center was established and moved to the nice building, of course, every few years it has a new vision and new goals, but at the moment vision is that this center is a leading, to have a leading applied research institute that through excellence in research and education serves as a key to economic development, environmental and health quality preservation of the local community. The goals of this institute is to promote